National Fire Radio.
What's up, everybody? It's Pip, and welcome to another episode of the Size Up by National Fire Radio, because what you do off the job matters. And it's funny because if you actually watch these on YouTube and you watch my intro, I'm always looking away from the camera because I have to look at the time. So I make sure I don't start the intro too early and then mess it up. And it's just one of those things in my head that, I just have to always do. But I'm really trying hard to focus on the camera and nowhere else. And see my guest who I'm talking to because he's on the screen too. But it's a whole different back end to this that I just never really thought I would be so concerned about. I always said, like, I hate the sound of my own voice. Why do I have a podcast? But I also hate the way I kind of look when I'm doing a podcast as well, where my hands are, what I'm doing. But anyway, if you're listening in the car, you miss all the fun excitement. And you also miss my smart new polo shirt that our good friend Jeremy got for me out at FDIC, because I felt like I had to throw the collar on today because my guest sent me an email with like 60 pages of scientific-y type stuff. And I'm like, this is going to be a smart podcast. So now, just if you are watching, I'll do a quick like stand up on my stool. I am wearing shorts with skulls on them too, underneath my smart looking podcasty host. But I'm so stoked today to have someone I met out at FDIC, Ryan Conley from Carna Bunker Gear. What's happening, buddy?
What's up, man? I think you did a great job introducing yourself, and your voice just sounds absolutely pleasant. Just a radio presence, you know?
Please, no, I do not have. I didn't start, but prior to getting hired as a firefighter, I was working EMS, and I became a dispatcher. And I'm like,
okay.
Who wants to hear my voice at 3 a.m.? Like, no one.
Practice right there.
Yeah, my big radio announcer voice in all those calls that I sent out,
Well,
all those lift assist I dispatched.
at 3 a.m., you get to do the sexy time voice because nobody's listening to the radio.
and then the people that are like, did he just do a sexy time voice?
Yep. Yeah. It keeps everybody awake and entertained.
I was primarily an EMS dispatcher, and it was like a fairly busy project that I was dispatching for. So most of the folks were jumping at night, and we were all night owls, so we were all awake. So you never really had that. Like I would wake some folks up every now and again, I'm sure, with my illustrious voice here. But it was just one of those things that it was just communication back and forth. And I feel like being a dispatcher gave me a totally different view of actually being a responder.
Yeah, man, I believe that for sure. That's the whole different side of the ball game and a whole lot of responsibility that I don't think a lot of people realize. That's a hard job.
Yeah, I definitely didn't realize the responsibility when they were like, hey, man, you want to go work in dispatch? I'm like, sure. I don't have to be in the rain or go into stinky smelling elevators anymore for a while. Like, this sounds like an easy job to do. And then, all of a sudden there's 18 phones ringing and radios going off everywhere. And you're like, oh my God, like multitasking. Like,
to its max. Yeah. And now look at you. You're here.
Now look at me.
You're here. You're guiding podcasts like a pro and not dispatching for lift assist anymore.
Clearly, you have not listened to all my episodes. And I'm going on the lift assist instead of dispatching for them. So
going on them is a little bit more fun. So said no one ever, but yeah.
Exactly. Depending on, that person you find. Like it's so weird too, because again, I was working on the road too at the time, but like when you're in dispatch, you're painting like a mental picture of what the crews are seeing or what the person's telling you. And it's the same as I'm doing now, and I'm responding. Like I'm creating that mental picture in my head of what I'm going to walk into. And I think being in dispatch really gave me that time, because then post the call, and especially some of the, stranger ones, let's just call them odder ones, I would have this mental picture, and the crew would call for, this is going back, dude. Like when you needed times and your number, you'd have to call dispatch, and I'd have to give them to you. There were no automated systems like we have today.
No timestamps.
And be like, dude, what was going on in that house, man? I was on 911. There was a lot happening there, huh? And like the medic would be like, bro, there was a chicken in the living room. Did you hear the chicken?
That's too funny, man. That's good. And hence the name of the show now, Size Up. You've got a great size up routine and a size up skill.
Dude, no one has even.
I put those two together right now.
You totally did, man. You've totally changed it. There were a lot of things that came up when it came to the size up. One being my short stature. That was like the first thing that was like, you're gonna call it the size up?
Oh, that's brutal.
Like,
That's the fire table talk right there.
right? Literally, like I was like, "Yo, man, we're getting ready to launch a podcast. I think we're gonna call it the Size Up. What do you think?" And the first person I told was like, "Dude, you're 5'2". Like
Dude.
for real?" Like,
Oh my God. That's right up the alley, dude. That's good. That's a good
isn't it? Isn't it
yeah,
perfect?
that's perfect.
Isn't it? So it's so perfect when you hear those things. But
That's
listen,
fun.
man, we've been babbling on here for a few minutes about me. Why don't you tell the folks who you are and where you're from and kind of how you got into this whole fire type stuff?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, we met at FDIC. I have been a fireman for 9 years. I work in Southwest Florida. I'm a driver engineer, which is, we actually hold that as a rank down there.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
then as soon as I turn in my paperwork, I'll be an acting officer. So I'm a little nervous about that, but excited for the opportunity. And I actually did. I know a lot of guys grew up wanting to be firefighters. I was between two paths. I was either going to be an exercise scientist, coach, trainer type thing, or a first responder. And I was actually leaning towards police work, and I went to school at Florida State for criminology. So I got my bachelor's degree in that back in the day. And then my ex-girlfriend's neighbor was a firefighter at Hollywood. He retired as a battalion chief. He was a hazmat captain when I met him. So he started talking to me about the job and basically explained how hard it was. And that kind of stood out to me, and I kind of wanted a challenge. So I went to the
That's an
academy.
honest man right there, bro. That is a
Yeah,
very honest man because very few people. It's so crazy. So they just released. I don't want to cut you off, but
no, go
I
ahead.
got to cut you off here. They just released for it here in Jersey. The civil service test announcement is going to be getting, or the sign up is going to be in like a month or so,
Yeah,
or 2 months,
no, put that
and
out
they
there.
just announced it,
Yeah.
right? And when they put out there like why you want this job, it's like good pay, health benefits, good schedule. You know,
Hmm.
whoever it is, they don't put the like this is really hard part
Yeah, it
that that
is.
that chief gave you, right?
Hmm. And yeah, no, but absolutely blast that, man. We need good guys in the service, and we need to promote what the job actually is. That's a whole nother thing of um, the public service announcements of what the job is, and I don't think a lot of the the shit that we go through really gets out there, like how difficult the job can be. It can be a grinder. So I think a lot of guys need to be aware of that. And but when you put that out there, I think it also attracts the right people that are
Yeah,
wanting
and
to
that's it.
come
And
work.
a former guest, Chance Craven, just had a big thing a few days ago on his social media account about not using the word hero
Yes, I saw
in
that.
your marketing, right?
Yeah,
For getting people to get this job.
super.
Be honest with them.
Yeah, and I actually that stood out to me as well. Super small world. I haven't met Chance yet. My business partners met him, but his his son does karate at the same studio that my cousin's kids do. So like he knows my family members in South Carolina, um, and super small
It is
world thing.
crazy how right? You get
Yeah.
out there in this world, in this emergency services world, and you meet someone like that who now I met him literally for about 30 seconds at FDIC. He was running one way, I was running
Yes.
another. He like grabbed me, he introduced himself. Even though we'd done the show before, we both had a quick laugh and he took off his way and I took off my way
Nice
and
to
we
see you
haven't
in person,
spoken
dude.
since.
Yeah.
That was literally what it was. He was almost like shaking me,
Mhm.
like it's me, we're meeting, and I have to run away. And I'm like, I have to run that way, so this works out.
Good, good.
But you get this small world atmosphere, right? And it's just crazy how big the world is, but really how small it can be.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's a whole different topic. But going back to this, like being honest about getting the job and the battalion chief from Hollywood, Florida, too, for all the folks
Yes,
listening,
yes,
not
yeah, not Hollywood,
Hollywood,
LA. Yeah,
California.
so Hollywood, Florida. But yeah, so I did. I jumped into the academy. It was challenging. It was a physical challenge, a mental challenge, and I enjoyed it. I liked being. I wanted to do something that was physical, like to be always be have a job that kept me honest, that like made me stay in shape, made me continue to push and be some kind of athlete. And I wrestled in high school. I know a lot of wrestlers are also drawn to this job, and they have the mental fortitude for it. And then, so long story short, I've been at my department for 9 years. I've enjoyed it. We have a good group of guys out there. We're about 12 stations, going on 13. We should be at a 19 to 20 by the time we're done expanding over God knows, the next 20, 30 years. And aside from that, I did go back to school. I started my master's degree in exercise physiology at FAU, so Florida Atlantic University. That has always been a passion of mine. I also coached on the side throughout this entire process. So I competed in powerlifting for a decade. I wound up at about the top 100 all time in my weight class. So with that, I wanted to further my education because I had so much practical background experience, and I read a lot of literature and did a lot of self education. I wanted to have the degree and finally take that next step that like shows people that I put the effort into going above and beyond and spending more time and resources to get a degree and to show that I did care about this stuff. And all of that's kind of blended together now to take my skill set from health and fitness and performance world and apply that to firefighters. And I think that there's more of that going on, but there's still a lot more good work that can be done in that field. And there's a lot of old school culture and mentality and just this is the way we've always done it type thinking. And we just have room to improve. And that's my biggest thing is I don't want to change something just to change something. But if we can improve somewhere, then we need to improve and try and do better. And I think that we can improve for ourselves and for each other in this category, at least with cancer risk reduction and fitness. So there's a lot that we could go into in those two avenues as well.
I love that room to improve, right? Because people are like, oh, I want to create change. I want to be a change maker. And we all know firefighters hate change. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Mike Torres said it on the episode that actually just dropped today about, a good friend of ours. Man, I'm name dropping like crazy today. A good friend of ours, Ron Smith, says that, firefighters hate change so much if they pay for something and the cashier tries to give them change, they're like, no, no, keep it, keep it.
That's
I
good.
hate change. Keep it. Right? But when you say it like we have room to improve,
Yeah.
we really do in every aspect of our life,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be the fire service, fitness, our personal lives, parenting, being a spouse, driving, I don't know, whatever I can think of, you can always have room to improve. And it's a very easy way to start the conversation,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And so with that mindset, me and one of my other, so our company is Carna Bunker Gear. Um, we founded this in October of 2022. It was when we conceptualized this idea. We were actually coming back from the gym. It was me and another one of my best friends who's a firefighter. He actually transferred. He's out in Scottsdale, Arizona now. He's been there for a couple years. We were thinking about some of the guys that we're really good friends with at work and how they trained in gear every day, which I support. But we were like, I wish that there was a concept or something that we could do that reduced the risk of wearing the gear all the time. Because we know that there's, by now, there's a ton of data out there. There's years and years and years, a plethora of data that says that, gear holds on to carcinogens and that it also comes from the factory with different kind of endocrine disrupting chemicals in it. So in our mind, we were like, let's try and make something that mimics the weight of the gear, the feel of the gear, the thermal retention capabilities of the gear, and has none of those risks. And that's really all this is a risk reduction tool. And in reality, the entire fire service is kind of founded on risk versus reward. And I know you've heard this because it was, it's the first thing you're told in the fire academy is risk a little to save a little, risk a lot to save a lot, and risk nothing for what's already lost. And that's a very famous quote. And I think that we've applied that concept here into training in gear by reducing your risk. Where our training gear that doesn't come from the factory with endocrine disrupting chemicals in it, and that we'll never see any kind of chemicals from an emergency scene or from even just a live burn in training. So you never have to really worry about how clean is your gear. It's just one of those things where you throw it on, go about your day, and then you can still feel good about going the extra mile and putting your gear on and going out to work out or going out to throw ladders, whatever it is. You don't have that risk in the back of your mind anymore that's maybe causing you to not do that. And you're kind of on the fence. You put this on and now you're like, oh yeah, whatever. Let's just go throw some ladders, go hang out with the boys, go do some work. And then you're not really worried if that's going to affect you 20, 30 years down the road. And I don't want that to be, I don't want this to be something that is holding guys back from that everyday self-improvement. So I think that with our product and our concept here, guys can get a little bit better every day, like what we talked about before.
So it's that thing too, and I do have a lot of listeners that are not in the fire service, so it's definitely something we're gonna dive into
Mm-hmm.
now. And um, I mean, again, we'll just jump right into it. But where people don't necessarily understand, and we are still of the understanding about the risks that we
Yeah.
face, right? People see a firefighter and they're like, "Oh my God, going into the fire is you're so brave for doing that. I could never do that," right? And even firefighters like, "I run in when people are running
Mm-hmm.
out, and I fight what you fear," and all that jazz that is fun to say sometimes. But some people that's exactly the way that they see this whole thing that we're doing,
Absolutely.
right? And over the history of the fire service, I mean, we have learned things. We have learned about different hazards. We have learned that we need to protect our respiratory system. We've learned that, there's different stressors that we're finding out more and more of. And we're continually learning. And I mean, when I started 20 years ago, we were fully encapsulated, but there were still some departments that were wearing long coats and hip
Yeah.
boots, maybe on the side, or some firefighters that were still not
Mm-hmm.
thinking that this larger gear was better for us. Um, and most recently, and I guess this is most recently, probably like within, you could be more of an expert, but probably in the past 5 years, it's really come to light that the gear that you see firefighters wear is being produced by or being produced with known carcinogens. However, those known carcinogens are things that keep us safe, so so we can go into the
Agreed.
fire. Is that the simplest way I could say
Yeah.
that?
And I think you're right. It has been so slight, not backtrack, but background overall, outside of firefighting. PFAS is the one of the chemicals that's a really big hot topic right now. The IAFF has been making it more public education now as well. But that was basically Teflon, is what PFAS is. It's a polyfluorinated compound.
Okay.
So that's a fluorine that's multiple fluorines stacked together in some combination. You can have like an unlimited amount of them to make different chemicals. But essentially, what it does is it repels oil. It's the only chemical that can do that. And in that property, it is basically used for essential use only within the United States and most countries around the world now. So for you to use it, it has to be needed. So do we need that on our firefighter gear? And that's a conversation that the academia, firefighters, and bunker gear companies need to have.
People well above our pay
Yeah,
grades.
and the conversation is going on.
I think that's something too that we should point out here because again, you mentioned the IAFF and listen, they're a very large labor union and they have a very large
Mhm.
voice. And a lot of times when things come from them, it looks like they are maybe attacking other folks
Yeah.
out there, because they are trying to stand for firefighters. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with their
Mhm.
messaging, but I think what you said is that the discussions are being had with them and several other organizations to try to
Yeah.
correct this because this isn't like a let's fix this problem overnight. This is like saying everyone's car can't have oil in it
Yeah.
anymore
Yeah.
tomorrow type of a
Yeah.
thing, right? Because for the folks that don't know, I think, and again, you probably know this better than me, but a set of structural turnout gear for a firefighter runs up to $3,500 to
Yeah.
$5,000
Yeah.
a set,
Yeah.
maybe.
That's a pretty good range. Yeah.
Round up,
Mhm.
right? So these are things that when you think if your department in your town has 100 firefighters, that's a lot
Yeah.
of gear. That is a lot of dollars. That is a lot of tax dollars. Let's talk about it that
Mhm.
way too, that need to be spent. And it's also a lot of time because I think what people don't know as well is that this gear is custom fit to my
Yes.
body. And again, you and I are not the
Mhm.
same size, and I'm a very special. I mean, they even just I'll shout it out to a former deputy chief in my department, who was in charge of our turnout gear about 10 years ago. He lives down in Florida
Oh
now,
yeah.
actually,
Nice.
but he made a point that on us smaller folks, our pockets were actually like wrapping around like the stock pockets that they send in the gear were like wrapping around our leg. And he pushed to get
Oh
smaller
wow.
pockets so that I wouldn't have these humongous like 1980s.
Yeah, cargo
Um,
baggy pants.
what are the pants,
Yeah,
cargo, baggy pant
yeah,
pockets on there. But all of that is a custom request, and it's not like these things are sure there's an assembly line sort of, but they're all
for
being made
sure.
custom. So that again adds to the cost, adds to the time, adds to all these things. So this problem that we're talking about today is not
It's not
like
simple. No,
switching on and off a
no.
light
And
switch.
I've presented on this topic a few times now. And I stole this saying from Jordan Peterson, but this entire thing is like a high definition problem. It's not a low definition problem. So us talking about it in a
I
low
like it.
def context is not going to do anybody any good because you have so many. It's like an onion. There's so many layers and context of this thing. Um, Aside from just the cancer risk reduction and the general fitness, you have, like you mentioned, this whole manufacturing side, the gear fitting side, the material that it's made of, how long does it last, what are the thermal protection ratings for these things, what's the thermal heat loss for these things, how does cleaning the gear affect the gear, how many chemicals and carcinogens are left on the gear when you clean it, depending on what kind of cleaning you do, gross decon, gear extractors. There's so many things that go into this.
So so
Yeah,
so
so many
much,
things that go
so
into this,
many
and that's why I sent
topics.
you those like 60 pages of citations and resources because again, we're making a product for a reason, but my overall purpose is to help us and to help firefighters. So I want to make sure that I give the proper context to everything and to give this entire conversation, to give it justice and to make sure that I'm providing people with more than just a tool to help reduce cancer risk reduction, but also concepts and thoughts and even free ideas and free things that you can do to help lower your risk reduction for cancer as a firefighter.
And that's such a big part of it too, because again, when we talk about cancer, people are like, but you wear those air tanks with
Mm-hmm.
masks on your face, so you shouldn't get cancer. And it's just come out again in the past 20 years, 10 years, whatever we want to say, where it's really we have done a better job at reducing our lung cancer rates by wearing
For sure.
SCBAs. It's all these other cancers that we're
Yeah.
exposed to. Even, you know, again, when I started, there may have been some folks who were against wearing their
Mm-hmm.
hood because when they got hired, they
Yeah.
didn't get a hood and they had this whole, if I could feel the fire on my ears, which I don't want to feel the fire. I felt the
It's
fire at
hot.
one time and I don't want to feel, yeah, it's not good. Like, I don't, I asked my dad that, my dad retired in 92 and I'm like, dude, it had to be really hot. And he's like, that's all I
Hmm.
remember was hot and coughing up
Yeah,
nastiness. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, I
for
don't want
sure.
to do that. But, even with hoods and how much of the hood came to protect us and protect an area that was unprotected, people started getting throat and mouth
Yeah,
cancers from realizing, like, oh, these things really hold in
yeah,
some nastiness.
yeah. And well, this was just a quick side piece. I had heard a conversation or a presentation from, I forget his name. Forgive me. He's one of the Charleston Nine guys. He was an engineer. He was a firefighter there, and he was one of the engineer pumpers that day. And he told us that when he got hired, that they were told to put a sponge in their mouth instead of wear their SCBAs. And that was, yeah, and hearing that kind of stuff from not that long ago, man. It was less than 20 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe. '09, yeah. And so he was hired a little bit before that incident, and they were not using SCBA protection because it was frowned upon. Um, and to touch on what you said before, with yeah, we've definitely the SCBA is necessary, absolutely necessary. And one side topic along with that is if you're an engineer or a battalion chief, if you're on scene and you're downwind or like close to this to the scene in the fire, throw a half mask on, throw your SCBA on. That the air is free, man. It's free. So
It's the best
it's
line ever. The
free.
air
Like
is
I don't
free.
understand that, and especially with overhaul when all this stuff is off gassing, that's like some of the worst time to go in there and not have protection. So again, that's something that is a high definition problem that is just a, a practical application or not a practical. It's a cultural thing of guys. There's a
It's just a
change.
change, right? I will gladly say this. When I started 20 years ago, I did not wear SCBA
Yeah,
during overhaul for
yeah.
sure. No one did. I mean, we were lucky we
And
had
I
our
don't
coats
think the
on
data was
during
probably
overhaul
out there
most of
back
the time.
then. And yeah,
Not at all. We had no idea about off gassing. Even though you saw things
yeah,
happening
you
in
don't
front
realize
of
what it
you,
is
you didn't know
for
what was in
sure.
the smoke. Yeah, you didn't know that you thought, okay, the fire's over there's air, the smoke is gone, right? I think that
Yeah,
was
for
more
sure.
of it, right? What we always thought was that the products
Hmm.
were in the smoke. And what we've learned in these 20 years is that these products are not just in the smoke, they are in the
Yeah.
atmosphere. And a lot of great people have been put out a lot of good research. I've been to a few classes where we're actually now we're to the point that we're monitoring the buildings with our 4 gas meters. We're in there. We're not allowing people
Hmm.
in without SCBA until we
For
get
sure.
clear
Yeah.
readings.
And to touch on what you were mentioning here is they're basically SVOCs and VOCs. So volatile organic compounds. They're low molecular weight. And because of that, they off gas very quickly. So those are going to be what's in your gear that is off gassing and also coming off of the combusted material that's been burned. Um, those usually on our gear, don't quote me on this, but usually within like a day or so, they're off. But they're off gassing very, very heavily within the first 30 to 60 minutes after a fire. So when you throw your gear back in the apparatus and you close the cabs and drive home, that stuff is basically at its prime. It's at its peak of off gassing into where you can inhale those molecules. Now, semi volatile organic molecules or compounds, sorry, those are they're a little bit heavier and they adhere to the gear, so they stick to the gear, and that's a lot of what has been studied the past 30 years is SVOCs and in particular PAHs, so polyacyclic hydrocarbons. And what those are basically, if you look at the char that's on your steak after you've cooked it, it's unburned carbon. So those are all over the place. They've been studied a lot, and that is one of the chemicals that they track in the gear that we've been analyzing and figuring out how to clean for a while, a long time. But that's one of these are just two chemicals is what I'm or two classes of chemicals. Let me rephrase that we are confronted with cleaning bunker gear or getting the gear clean. So just a brief list of things. You've got your SVOCs, you got your VOCs, those are the lighter molecular weight ones. You've got your PFAS, they're still trying the polyfluorinated compounds that we talked about before. We're still trying to see how dermally absorbable they are. That's being studied currently. I've talked to a lot of the scientists that are doing this work. Um, the chemical is not good. It stays in nature forever. You don't really want any of it in your system, but it's important to figure out how we're getting it in our system. Is it ingestion? Is it through the groundwater? Is it through what you're eating, or is it dermal absorption? So, like all of these pathways of absorption are important to clarify and figure out. So, is that something that we need to worry about in the gear, or is it getting exposed to us somewhere else? Flame retardants. Flame retardants are in the gear. They help improve performance. They're found in all 3 layers of the gear. They are absolutely dermally absorbable. They are endocrine disrupting chemicals, which means they typically, when that phrase is used in the terms of cancer, it usually means that they bind to the estrogen receptors and don't allow that system to function properly. So now you have these chemicals binding to estrogen receptors instead of estrogens. It causes mayhem with the endocrine system, and you basically are at a higher risk for cancer. I think from one of the studies I looked at earlier, people with higher flame retardant levels had about a 300% increase in dying from cancer. They did not see increase in cardiovascular disease or all-cause mortality, but cancer rates were elevated, and that was over a 16-year longitudinal study of about 1,100 people across the country in different parts of the nation. And then we also have micro, yeah.
So hey, for the folks listening from New Jersey, July 1st, the civil service test application period opens, and this is one of those things about
Yeah.
this job that you
Mm-hmm.
have to know, right? The hazards just aren't in what you see in the burning
Yeah.
building we go into. I mean, there's loads of hazards in there, right? And those are hazards we can see. And like Ryan said before, we can gauge a risk factor based off of a lot of knowledge that we have before we send people into those buildings or what's happening in there. Now we have all these other things that are
Mm-hmm.
going into it. And again, we've just learned about these in the past, I would say post 9/11 era fire service, especially what started happening to folks that were down in that area
Yeah.
of lower Manhattan on 9/11 and the subsequent days after, before respirators were really getting put into use down there. That probably sparked a lot of conversation and got people to start realizing, well, if it happened down there from the stuff that was in that air, from the building collapsing and everything else involved,
Hmm.
what else could it be? And that's where you kind of get all those chemicals you're talking
Yeah,
about from.
and heavy, yeah, and even the buildings like the 9/11 stuff, you have heavy metals, and that's a whole nother thing. You got lithium ion batteries. There's a plethora of chemicals that we're exposed to, and all of them are cleaned differently. Like some of these chemicals are hydrophobic, so they don't come out very well in traditional gear extractors. So they don't like water. So you're not seeing a good return. I mean, you need to wash the gear. Put that out there. You need a gross decon. You need to wash your gear after you're in an emergency scene in a fire. And the unfortunate part is it's just not as effective as we would hope for it to be, but it's definitely better than nothing. Like I think on average you're getting 68% of the one of the studies looked at SVOCs and PFAS, I want to say, and it got about 68% of it out with a traditional gear extractor. And those are more common. Do you guys have those at your department?
We do, yeah. We actually just upgraded to get them into
Yeah,
every station now. We used to only have them in one station. Now they're in all three, which was
good.
a great thing because the guys in the outhouses, would have to come in on their
Hmm.
day off type thing. Or, we actually, so again, being in the Northeast, let's say we're not the most, we really don't want our change back. Like we may not even take it if
Yeah.
we gave you a $5 bill or gave you a 10 for something that costs $4. We still may be like, no, no,
It's
no,
all you. It's all
keep
you.
the change, right? And then this, yeah, this area of the fire service is very much
Hmm.
against change. Let's just say
Yeah.
is a good way to put it. What I can say though, speaking to my department, is we had our first gear extractor right around when I got hired, or came shortly thereafter. And I'm not gonna lie, it took some time for people to be like, I should be washing this gear. Um, to the point now where if you go in the day after a fire, there's a line up of gear that
It's
now the
helping clean.
duty shift is switching out for people. Yep, we'll throw yours in, take yours out, hang yours up, get yours on the dryer, whatever it takes. We're not
Hmm.
going to rebuild it for you type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You rebuild your own gear. But it's just kind of a very common practice. The same with gross decon. We may not be doing it
yeah. Hmm.
at the scene all the time, but we're coming back to the
Yeah,
firehouse. The hose is out. Everything's getting washed down. Um, like you said about off gassing, the air packs are coming off the rigs. They're getting
perfect.
scrubbed and washed down. The interiors of the cabs are getting washed down to the
Yeah.
best of our ability, right? And it comes to a point where you have to take self responsibility for this to do the
Hmm.
best you can. And like you said, if you're not doing it, then you're just
Yeah.
way behind the eight ball. You have to be doing something. So if we can do the most things possible to prevent this from happening, I
Yeah,
really think we're
and
ahead of
what
the
you
curve.
touched on there, well, number one, that's an awesome culture. I'm glad you guys are doing that. I'm happy when I hear that kind of stuff, and especially the cab decon. The one of the studies that really pushed me over the edge with this when I was doing all this research was a study done in England, and they looked at just PAHs, so just one of the SVOCs that we talked about earlier. Cancer risk models are usually based out of 100,000 people. So with they were looking at PAHs and dermal absorption in firefighters. They saw that 350 firefighters out of 100,000 would get cancer only from wearing clothing contaminated with PAHs. They saw that 230 would get cancer from touching the apparatus from just PAHs. So one chemical is causing this amount of cancer out of the plethora of things that we've already touched on. So we just have a higher risk ratio than the normal population. That's why firefighters are dying. At 2 out of 3 firefighters die from cancer, whereas normal Gen Pop is 1 out of 3. We have 70% of deaths, of firefighter deaths, are cancer related. Our numbers are astronomically higher than the general population, and doing some of these small things, yeah, they add
And
up.
again, too, with that be with that being said, too, though, definitely the small things add up,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be doing this, right? We have to be taking our lives into our own hands, our health, our wellness, for sure. And we just passed a presumptive
Great.
cancer bill here in New Jersey. you know, the folks that I don't want to say the folks that matter. The folks that make the folks that make the policies
Hmm.
are listening to us. And they're listening to us off the backs of our brothers and
Yeah,
sisters who
the ultimate
unfortunately
sacrifice.
made,
Yeah,
you can call it the ultimate sacrifice, or however you want to call it, before us. And it's one of those sayings that I'm going to butcher it, where it's like, never let a man's ghost, man, I can't think of the
sounds good
rest of
though.
it goes, and that's horrible. But it's one of those things like, it's a good one too, and I can't let me stick with it. I'm not the best quote guy unless it's movie quotes. But it's one of those things that, like, that 70% number, if we can lower
Yeah,
that to 50%,
huge.
we're on a roll here. That's a, I mean, we can
Just
lower it to 65%. We're
keep
on a,
chipping
in
away,
my
chip
career
away.
time.
So and basically, I was giving you guys applause for the gross decon and technical decon of the apparatus. Um, I try and do the same thing, just wipe down the interior, and especially on areas like your forearms, where your forearms resting on the driver console or the armrest. All of
Yep.
these things that are that you touch with your bare skin. And another freebie is wearing long sleeve shirts. This is something that I just started doing. They've got a good study out there now showing that obviously, if we just wrapped ourselves in plastic wrap and threw a bunch of shirts on and a bunch of gear and all this stuff, and we walked around like the Michelin Man, we would definitely reduce dermal absorption of cancer, like no doubt about it, because you have all these layers to penetrate. But then you overheat and you can't do anything. So there's this fine line that we have to walk between performance and health benefit and health risk. So at least with wearing long sleeve shirts, they did see that that reduced these SVOCs and VOCs and some other chemicals from penetrating. So that's a freebie right there. Clean your gear, wash the truck, clean the
Oh
truck,
man.
wear long sleeve shirts and long sleeve pants under your bunker gear. There you go.
Well, so it's not wash the
Clean the
truck; it's
inside.
clean the
Both,
inside of
yeah,
the
be
truck,
both
clean the
the
paint,
exterior and
right?
the interior.
Because
Yeah, yep,
Yep. Because for
for sure.
years we washed the truck every day. We
No,
never detailed the inside
yeah,
of it and wiped that stuff down for sure. It never
no,
would have even
me
crossed my
neither.
mind. I think that's so. It's been it's been it's been educational for me, especially getting more out there and doing all the stuff in the fitness world with firefighters and things. How many different things I learned that it wasn't that I
Hmm.
was doing them wrong. It was just I didn't know why
Yeah,
it was so important to do it. It's the same as when you talk about sleep deprivation and all things we never talked about before. That you're like, man, now that I know these things, I at least know when the problems can
yeah,
start and how to
and
maybe
that
prevent
you
them.
touched on sleep deprivation. That's another thing that I try and hit on pretty heavy is we've obviously laid the foundation throughout this conversation that we're high risk for exposures, right? We have a high amount of risk from carcinogens. The opposing end is we usually don't have that great of sleep, and sleep is, in layman's terms, when your body heals and recuperates. Um, there's a really good study that I like to refer to that showed it was when guys slept 4 hours or less, their natural killer cells, which is basically the immune system's primary cell that kills pathogens and cancer cells, precancer cells, it was reduced by up to 72% efficiency. So lack of sleep
Oh my
is
god.
literally destroying our immune system's ability to fight off the higher risk of carcinogen that we face more often than common folk, than general pop. So taking sleep serious.
This is
I
the
know,
best
yeah.
recruitment episode ever. I'm just gonna name this
But
like, hey,
and
be a
like I said,
firefighter
there's yeah, yeah.
from Ryan and Pip. Come take this
Best job
job
ever,
from Ryan
brother.
and Pip.
But there's things that we can do to improve that. So like taking your sleep seriously off shift, not going out and getting drunk and staying out till 2 or 3 in the morning. Like take your you. I hate to say it like this, but you kind of have to live like you're an athlete. Like you have to take your job seriously, and this isn't just like a 3 or 5 year stint in the NBA. This is a 25-year career. This is a long time.
Yeah.
25 if you're lucky. Some guys go work longer and harder. So take your sleep seriously off shift. Take responsibility of your own actions. And exercising and eating healthy does help to reduce some of the onslaught that we have from both of these directions. So just exercise, yeah, just exercise can increase cancer risk or can reduce cancer by 12 to 21%. And that was a variety of cancers across the board. So you're getting improvement in blood sugar, blood glucose. Your natural killer cells actually have an acute spike by 50 to 200% for hours after a workout. So just being generally healthy and generally fit it does go a long way. And then taking your sleep off shift seriously. Nutrition also lowers cancer rates if you're eating enough fiber, you're eating enough berries and vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables. They're seeing stomach and colon cancer rates drop by around 20%. I think it's like 17. But when you start to add these small details up, the individual efforts become greater than the sum. Or is that how you say that? Now I'm screwing up a quote.
Yeah, especially if you're already no, but especially because we're already in a group that we know is exposed to more carcinogens than the average person. Because these studies
Yeah,
that you're talking
yeah.
about are just,
Hmm.
worldwide cancer numbers, right? So we now have to take that responsibility on ourselves and on our brothers and sisters to be like, look, we have to make these changes, and no one here on the Size Up podcast by National Fire Radio or representing Carna Bunker Gear is saying you have to
No.
become some super athlete or you have to become, this superhuman, give up all the things that you do that may not be the best things in the world, right? No one's telling you that. All we're saying is you
Yeah.
have
Just
to
do
do
better.
better, right? You have room to improve and you have to do better at all these things. And if you take all these things and put them together, you may get the chance to
Mm.
have that long retirement that is right on that little poster, like good retirement plan. But you
For
want to
sure.
enjoy that retirement plan, right? I know I want to enjoy that retirement
Yeah,
plan.
and
That's my
everything, like we
plan,
said before, all
hopefully.
this is a risk reward ratio. And I'm not going to tell anybody how to live. I want people to do their thing and to enjoy their life and all that. And everyone's going to take risks that I just want everyone to be aware of what the risks are, right? You can figure out what is worth it to you and what's not worth it to you. I personally don't like drinking that much anymore. I did that in college. I'm good. Um, and I know guys that like to drink every day they're off shift and like that's their thing. If you enjoy it and that's part of your lifestyle and it's just what you and your family do or you and your friends do, whatever. I just want people to be aware and like you make the decision. You're an adult. Um, and at the end of the day, that's all we can do is just give people the education and the information and allow them to make the decisions for themselves. But I just want to make sure that I'm putting this stuff out there and being honest about it with people, so that then if they do care, they can be like, oh hey, how do I improve this? How do I lower my risks and still do this job that I want to do and help people? So I think all of us. This was something that I heard from a firefighter down in Hialeah who's I want to say prostate cancer, but he had a serious form of cancer. Most prostate, it might have been, I think it was prostate. Pancreatic usually kills prostate. Most people usually die of
Yes.
prostate cancer or with prostate cancer, not from it. Um, so I don't think he had prostate. He had a serious form of cancer. He worked with the University of Miami, and he had spoken at the firefighter cancer symposium at the University of Miami this past year. And he was said that he would give his life up for anybody, and a lot of us would do that for a stranger. But he didn't think he was going to die from cancer, and luckily, the research and the work and the help that he received from the Sylvester Center in Miami has allowed him to survive so far and to continue to fight this battle. And I think that he's in remission now. And don't quote me on that.
I think that's something. No, but that's something too that so
Yeah,
many of us wouldn't have thought, right? And even when you had folks that were active uh, duty deaths or retired folks that died of cancer, it was like, oh, that's really sad. They got cancer. No one was
yeah,
thinking it was the job that
yeah.
could have given them that cancer, right? It's very hard to make these direct correlations, which again gives some folks
Mm-hmm.
the ability to kind of chirp back at us,
No,
like
it's there.
even though the data is there. Oh no, that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't caused by that, right? But it's the same as like, oh my god, I didn't die on 9/11, but then years down the road you have all these people
Yeah.
still suffering the effects from it. I just know a good friend, firefighter, FDNY firefighter, just had to go to a funeral last Sunday. He couldn't come hang out with us because it was a
God, yeah, and that's
9/11
something
related cancer
you
death.
guys deal with that a lot more
Um,
than the guys in the South do. We just don't have, some guys went up there and helped, but it wasn't our local community that was affected. So, I
well, I think too, though, to speak to that, and I want to move into
oh yeah,
Carna
for
because
sure,
we're,
for
we're
sure.
getting close to that hour time. We got to talk about your company because you're definitely way too smart for this podcast and all the things you've said. But it's been great the way you said it. But you have to something too about the 9/11 cancer, post 9/11 cancer related deaths is
True.
it's
Yeah.
not just firefighters. I mean, it's not just police officers, it's not just emergency responders.
There.
It's folks who were
Yeah.
just living in that neighborhood or working in that neighborhood or walking, media people,
Hmm.
service dogs, just it's just so vast. So it does point that exposure into
Yeah.
a
And my
long
heart
term.
goes out to all you guys with
Right.
that. And it obviously it's a national thing and all of us hold that closely, but you guys were literally, neighbors to it and affected by it. And it's something that's a much deeper part of your community that you're still seeing the repercussions of, decades down the road.
It's unreal. No one
Yeah.
no one could have ever imagined that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's still unreal to think about it, right? But so all right, so firemen, what we do is we fix stuff, right? That's an easy way. You see a problem, you try to fix it. So you decided that, listen, what if we take all of the stuff out of the turnout gear that allows us to go into burning buildings, IDLHs, and folks can train in that. And when you're saying train in that, I think, because at first when you came up and started talking
Hmm.
to me with your girlfriend there, I was like, I hate. uh, I'm not going to say I hate because I've done it and I still may do it again.
Yeah.
I've worked out in my turnout gear. I've run 5Ks in my turnout gear. I'm not a fan of folks doing it.
Yeah.
This is what I have to do because I'm a fireman. Like maybe I've
Hmm.
done a 9/11 remembrance workout in my turnout gear. I'm not just doing burpees in it because nothing kills me more than seeing someone on social media doing burpees in their turnout gear and then not putting their chest to the ground. I'm like, take the
You're
turnout
gonna
gear
do
off,
that
put your
damn
chest to the
exercise the right
ground, and
way.
do a real burpee. I'm just going to say it out loud, right? Maybe that burns me up. But, reading more and looking more into it, you're really getting this gear so that when the folks are in the fire academy and they're spending
Yeah.
the majority of time in their gear, they don't have these exposure problems. Or for when I'm at the firehouse and hey,
Hmm.
we're gonna do a hose movement drill, we can put this gear on and not the gear that's
100%,
actually
man.
been in the
Yeah, you
fires,
nailed it.
correct?
The burpees in the gear is great, and those are basically our two of our main directions. Is I essentially am trying to change the culture in the fire service, and I know that that's a big ask to do, but again, I think that it's somewhere that we can improve upon. And if this wasn't something I didn't believe in, I wouldn't have spent the time and money and resources that I have dumped into this, into trying to make this work and trying to help my brothers and sisters. And it's been a lot, but I like the task and I like what we're doing here, so I'm gonna continue to do it and push uphill. But to train in gear, if you don't need thermal protection, like what you stated, you wear this. You don't need to be wearing gear that's full of carcinogens, either from the factory or from exposures, or especially if you're in an academy and you're wearing gear that's 9 years old. That's the worst, dirtiest shit you could put on your body. So if you're doing a hose line drill, RIT
Yes.
ladders, hydrants, pumping, just wearing your jacket or just wearing your pants, whatever it is, you can wear this and have no risk and save your bunker gear for the frontline performance. Because every time you wear that and you beat it up, you wash it, you do all these things to it, you are causing damage to the gear. That gear is expensive and you're also affecting its performance level. So why don't we keep our gear as optimal as possible, keep it as close to frontline performance, like off the factory shelf as possible, and leave that for the emergency scenes or for when we actually need thermal protection. It's something that's a low hanging fruit.
It's
Exactly.
it's so
I
simple,
really
it's
do, man.
stupid. No offense.
I
And I'm mad that I didn't think of it. Like, I'm kind of mad.
look,
Like,
when I got
I'm
the
a little
patent
mad
for this, we
beside you
got the
right now.
patent
Why
in
didn't I think of
October.
this?
I was blown away that nobody had done this already, and I thought the same thing as you. I'm like, there's going to be something out there. There's no way that nobody's done this already, but I think it's also kind of extended. I think the timing of it was perfect, right? Like it's the perfect storm where there's all this information coming out about cancer now. The cost of the gear is skyrocketed. It didn't used to be that expensive. So it's kind of the perfect storm for all this, to where we have the education now. We have firefighters that want to improve their health and lower their cancer risk rates. And we have chiefs in departments that don't want to spend so much money replacing expensive gear and repairing it. So if you're replacing gear every 5 years and it's not getting its 10-year life, that's expensive, man. That's $250,000.
It's not.
No, most
There's no way it's getting its 10-year life. Like,
I
unless you're
agree.
in a very,
And
very,
my
very
department numbers at
slow
least were, I
department,
want to say
you're not.
50% of our gear reached 10 years. Now, if you were to buy 50 sets of frontline gear at $4,000 a pop and buy 50 sets of my training gear, after 5 years, you're either going to be break even cost with 50 sets of training gear and replacing, let's just say you replace half of the, instead of replacing 25, you only have to replace 12. You're money ahead instead of having to spend more, another 100 grand on gear. So it's one of those things where we're seeing improvements in health and safety long term for firefighters with cancer risk reduction with this, or we will. You will see improvements in your own bunker gear because as soon as you wash the gear up to 10 washes, you're seeing it affect the performance of the gear. Thermal heat loss is reduced, the tear strength is reduced. There's all these things that happen.
Wash your gear.
Wash exactly.
Wash your
It's
gear to
it's
help
such a
you, but it's
tightrope we
also
have to
hurting you,
watch
right?
walk here,
It's
and liquid CO2 is also out there as
yeah.
a gear as a not a gear extractor. Liquid CO2 cleaning, that's another form of wash that needs more studies, but it seems to be better at removing some of these SVOCs. It's still not great at removing heavy metals or PFAS. But anyways, that should have less wear and tear on the gear, so you can kind of use that acutely for after a big incident or something. Do your gear extractor, and then also for our gear, besides the fire ground training and fitness, throwing your gear on to do workouts, you can use it for pub eds, and you're not having to go out into public or to schools and show kids what we look like while wearing dirty gear.
it's another it's another
Mm-hmm.
one that I read in your smart guy papers you sent me where I was like, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like, why am I letting the teacher wear
Mm-hmm.
my coat just because we're around the same size,
To wear it.
and that teacher wants to feel what it's like to put on fire gear, and I'm like, well, here, put this nasty thing on that I've sweated in, done, like
I
just
I will
disgusting, like
say
it's
that
disgusting. Just
I
like
wasn't
here it
smart enough to
is,
think
like
of that
go
on my
ahead.
own. We actually had a department come to us and they were like, "Hey, I want to use this for pub ed stuff," and I was like, "That's very smart. You're a genius. Thank you. We would love to provide that service, and I
Thank
will
you.
tell everybody else
I'll
as
be
well."
moving on. I was just gonna have a commercial come out about
Yeah,
that. An ad was coming out exactly for
that's
Pub Ed.
awesome.
Like, I can't believe you actually thought of it today like that. But it is a big thing too. And you said that like gear out of the basement, like you see
Yeah.
people using that all the time too, like the old gear. Like,
That's
oh,
the
bring this to
worst.
Pub Ed. It hasn't been in a fire in, you know, 10 years
It
or something
is
like that.
because
Yeah, and you're telling me now that's
it's
worse. So
funny
I'm like,
because
oh
the older
man,
sets of
son
gear,
of
it gets saturated with water, so you actually have higher thermal protection from that gear, but you have less thermal heat loss, so you actually sweat way more in it. And there's chemicals that have been in it for 9 years, so they're
a.
and everything else is kind of falling apart. If it's got PFAS on it, which every gear made before this year hat does, um, after whatever the time frame of like gear that we would be using that's an operational standard, that stuff flakes off. It gets over. So it's kind of a nightmare. It's a worst case scenario to be putting a brand new guy in the fire service into a old set of gear. So if they have to wear it,
Which is again one of those things. Even the time it takes, right? So we get rid of all these PFAS in the gear. My department just got
hmm
new gear two
yeah. Now you
years
got to
ago. I don't know, 3 years ago, whatever it was. We're,
no
we're not getting new
for
gear
sure.
till the cycle kind of goes. You know what I mean? Like, and we're to a point now where we're kind of in a good cycle of like every 5 years, I think, or so. And then your current gear
hmm
becomes your old gear, and then you get rid of your old gear. But that didn't happen overnight either. That's
Yeah,
taken my
cycle
whole
through.
career to get us
Yeah.
to this point of like everybody's got two sets. Yeah, but your old set, your set becomes your old set, which still isn't
hmm
the best thing. If we could buy everybody two brand new sets and then you're just able to keep using
For
them,
sure.
you're
And
doing way better. But we just
I don't
can't.
even know if
There's just not enough money to
I'm
go
I'm
around.
waiting to see more of what comes out of some of these studies. But I'm not convinced that we don't need PFAS on the gear because it's the only thing that provides oil protection, and it does help keep you safe if you have hydraulic fluid on the gear, if you have
I agree.
petroleum, oil, something on the gear. It also raises its heat resistance or its flammability. So like it's there for a reason. And if there was any essential use for oil repellency, I think it would be on firefighter gear. Um, and that's just my
Yep,
personal opinion
could
on
be a
it.
good reason.
And
I
like
mean,
I said,
again, there's just so much to it.
mm,
But the fact that we're having this conversation, right, and you're out at FDIC, and there's so many other people out there talking about it, and even that
for
conversation about
sure, I
PFAS
agree.
got
Yeah.
people to clean the rigs, right? Because
Mm,
just saying clean cab did not get people to clean the rings, or saying we're going to take your SCBA out and put it back, and it just whatever. That again is when you get
yeah,
that
and
kind of snowball moving in a
no
direction, right?
PFAS. I agree.
But
Yeah,
the conversation did get people saying we should clean these, right? Maybe we're not
for
going to take the
sure. And
SCBAs out of our rig, but we're going to clean them after every
100%
fire
that's what
because we
this
definitely
is
didn't used to be
PFAS
good.
has just become a gateway conversation for all of this because even guys that are in a hole that don't take their change, that they're far against any of this forward progress educational wise as far as like cancer risk reduction. Like they just don't care. They think they're gonna get cancer one way or another. Even they know, they're like, oh yeah, what's that chemical? Oh yeah, the PFAS stuff. Yeah, I heard about that on the news or the international or somebody. So like, it's at least a gateway conversation for me and for us now to be able to talk to everyone about this. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
I saw
Hmm.
the
Well,
foam infomercial
yeah,
at
and
3
that stuff
a.m.
was
I
good
saw
too. That stuff
you've been
worked. It
exposed.
suppressed the. So, anyways, but yeah, that the fluorines worked. Different podcasts, but they did see about
Different
1%
podcast, different
absorption through
day.
skin on that, I believe, from Notre Dame University. They did look at the dermal absorption of foam, so there was a little bit from foam. So I will say that. But yeah, well, let's
You could be the
let's not say
smartest
that.
firefighter
I
I've
read
ever
a
met.
lot, and
I'm just going to throw it out there for you. I thought you were just a big muscle guy into fitness, and
I
now I'm
did know a
like,
good
and knew a good restaurant to send me to in Fort
Dude, I
Lauderdale. Now
retain
I'm
so
like,
many
dude,
obscure facts about just stuff that I read, and my girlfriend's like, I don't know how you do this. Like, you just like have these numbers that stay in your head, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know. But yes, I enjoy reading about this stuff. No,
she's no slack
yeah,
either. Like she's
Mhm.
pretty smart. I
That's
find
all
her
you
on
need. A
social
good
media now. After
restaurant
that restaurant
recommendation.
recommendation,
Follow.
I'm like, these are my people. These are my people. 100%. Listen, if you're people, it's a huge misnomer about
No
fitness
food.
people and like, oh no, they don't know how to eat good food or
Hmm.
anything like that. No, no, no. Ask the fitness people because they're not only eating the good food,
Yes.
they're eating the plentiful plates
Yes.
and the
Yeah. And then if you
healthiest
eat,
good food
get a
that's
cheat
out
meal or
there.
whatever you want to call it, indulge yourself a little bit. We know where those good spots are too, because we're not gonna waste our time on some, bobo
Oh,
peasant
dude,
dessert or something like that.
my sons were like, this place is
Dude,
so
did you get the
good. These
steak?
are the best pancakes
Did anybody get the flank
ever.
steak?
I'm like,
Okay. The
no,
hash is good too.
I got the
Dude, the flank
I
steak is
wanted
like
the
the
flank
size of my
steak,
head.
but I got
It's
the
one of the
hash,
biggest
which was
breakfast steaks I've ever seen in my entire life. So yeah. Dude, I don't even remember it
throw a
either right
plug
now.
for your
I knew
steak
you were gonna say
sandwich
that
because I
too, and
forgot the
it's
name of
like
it. So,
blank in my head. It's on Fort Lauderdale Beach.
oh, it's in Fort Lauderdale. It's
Yeah, I
right
think that's
on
it. Yeah.
A1A
I was like,
there.
it's
It's
going to
called
hit me
like
as soon as we get off this podcast, but
La Tinta. Only brunch. We went there on Saturday morning, and then we walked
mhm.
by on Sunday morning, going to the wedding after party. Sunday morning, it was like a club up in that place for brunch. They had not only did they have a DJ, but she had a violin and was like getting down on the violin to
That's
the
how they
club
do it.
music she was pumping at 10:30 in the morning. And I'm like, man, we missed a good time today. Like
Fort
maybe we
Lauderdale
shouldn't go
Beach,
to the
baby.
post
That's how
wedding
they
party. We
roll.
should just stay here.
That's funny.
It was definitely a good time. It was definitely a good time. But
Hmm.
listen, man, we're getting to that hour mark that I took up of your time here, and you've shared so much information. And tell everybody where they can
Yeah.
find you, where they can learn more about Carna Bunker Gear, because this is
So
definitely
we
a
hit the
topic
market
that's
in
going to be
January.
continuing
We're
for
we're still
sure.
a new company. We're still putting out more content, more information, more educational material, and we're getting our demo suits out there. But you can reach us at Carna Bunker Gear on Instagram. We also have a Facebook profile. My business partner Garrett, he mainly mans those things. I also hop on there. Like I've communicated with you on Instagram, but he's the one that makes it all look good. Like I'm not good at that stuff. So he does all the algorithms, makes all the pictures. He's very good at videography and
Gotcha.
things like that. So you can find us there. We also are starting a YouTube channel. I have one presentation on there. We're going to add to that to just put more stuff on there. And what else do we have? My email is carnabunkergear@gmail.com. Very simple. So you can reach us through any of those avenues. I'd be more than happy to send everybody the information that I've gathered over the years that I've accumulated into some literature review papers. It's a lot. And also
It's a lot.
documents regarding the gear showing that it's PFAS free, it's flame retardant free, all these other things. A set of gear, an individual set of gear runs about $1,500 right now. For departments, once they get to 50 units, it drops to 1,000. So essentially, as soon as you buy 33 units, it's the same as buying 50. So if it's, so if you're anywhere around 25, 30 units, I just push departments to buy 50 and you got 50 sets thrown out. And it goes all the way down to $700 a unit at 200 units or more, I believe. If departments are, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I feel like too, and I don't want to cut you off, but like,
Hmm.
I feel like this gear, being you're not wearing it into a fire or on
Yeah,
emergency scenes,
yeah,
this is
we
more
didn't
like
touch on
small,
that.
medium, large.
So
Like
yeah,
they're getting
we
the
have seven
small.
sizes
You know
right
what I
now.
mean?
We're kind
Like
of
right?
tweaking them. I think I have it exactly how I want it now. We were basically into the final stages, but it's extra small. There's an
Is
extra
there
small. Honestly,
is there an
I
extra
think you would
small?
be too big for
Do
an
you have
extra
extra
small. I've
small?
sized that off of
Yes, my
a
brother.
very petite girl that I know who's a firefighter down here. Um, yeah, so I think no,
My new best friend.
you'd be at least a small.
No
You
one
might
ever
be a
says
medium.
that to me.
So we go all the way up to triple XL. Yeah, baby, medium. We go all the way
Oh
up to
man, a
triple
medium?
XL. So
Get
extra
some.
small all the way to triple XL. 7 sizes. Um, and yeah, basically you get in where you fit in. You don't have to have the exact measurements like we do with our gear because there's none of the NFPA standards where you have to have 2 inch overlap here and there, et cetera, because it's not PPE. So you put the suspenders on, you can
Yeah, yeah.
adjust it. I made the
Yep.
crotch really big so that everybody can kind of move it to where they need to. Like I did that on purpose. So yeah, for the most part, dude, we've had a ton of people test run the gear. I mean, just at our first convention that we went to, Orange County Convention Center, they had the fire sled fitness. It's kind of like a combat challenge, but with apparatus and material you can buy. Yeah, so they're awesome. I love Rick.
Yep.
He's super
Yeah, I
good.
know
He's
the
helped me a
fire
lot.
sled dudes.
So we actually provided some gear for Orange County to wear and some other department people that didn't want to wear their frontline gear. We had 30 people at least that wore 3 of our sizes, and it basically fit everybody from like 6'4" to like a 5'6", 5'7" chick. So it might have not been perfect, but for training gear, it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, yeah.
But again, we're We're not. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be perfect. Like my
Perfect.
stuff that I wear into a
Yes,
fire,
yes.
I need it to be. I need it to fit me. You know what I mean? Like I need it to fit. I need it to fit. I need it to be comfortable. It's already most. Listen, I hate. I have
Oh
a guy
wow.
coming
Okay,
on the podcast in a little bit who's done Georgia Smoke Diver, and people
that's
are like,
hard.
"Well, why don't you do Smoke Diver, Pip? Why don't you do Smoke Diver?
Yeah.
It'd be perfect." And I'm like, "Cause I hate wearing turnout
Hmm.
gear." I'm not even the mental end of it. I'd be so down for the physical end. I'd be so
For
down
that
for
long.
the fact that
Yeah.
someone told me you have to wear your turnout gear so long. I'm like, nope, I'm out. I don't
It's
like
like wearing
wearing it
sweaty socks all
when they
day.
force me to wear it, type thing. At the situations that I have to wear it,
uh,
yeah, it may as well be like wearing
hmm.
sweaty socks all day. Like I just don't
But yeah.
wear it messes up my hair, like all that kind of stuff. But it's so cool. And just this hour I spent with you, I've learned so much more about your company and what you guys are doing. And I'm really
Yeah, man.
hoping we can come up with some ways to work together in the future. Because when I think about this podcast and the line that Jeremy threw out there, what you do off the job matters, sir, what you've done off the job really is going to matter. And it may,
Hmm.
I don't want to say it in a rude way, it's probably not mattering today, and it's probably not going to be mattering in a few months or things like that. But the game that you're in for the future of firefighters and those
Hmm.
people that we do want to go to the New Jersey Civil Service site and take our test, it's going to matter for them because this idea you had is I
Yeah,
can
man,
just see
no
it
worries,
catching on for
and I
so many
appreciate
different
it,
reasons. So
and
thank you for
I
that,
hope you're
man.
right. I hope we can help, and that's why we're doing it. So hopefully it catches on sooner than later, and we can all wear blue bunker gear and look like Smurfs running around out there. Yeah,
Look like
the,
I was just gonna say
the
look like a
gear is
Smurf,
oh
but
yeah,
it's not good for
it
me to
hits
say
close
look
to
like a
home, right?
Smurf. So I'm kind of like totally screwed on this one, man. Thanks. It hurts in here, bro.
So
We did good for
for
an
everyone,
hour,
the
and now you
gear is
just hurt
blue
me, cut
just
me deep,
because
man.
firefighters
Just
we're
like
not the
that.
brightest people in the world sometimes, and we need to be color coordinated. So if you see blue gear, it is not rated for frontline use. It's not PPE. Don't take it. Do not wear that in the fire. That's why it's blue.
Don't wear that in the
And
fire.
we could maybe have a discussion about some other colors, but it's not going to be any normal color that you use. So red, orange, blue, definitely not black, definitely
It's
not
not
tan.
gonna be
So I
black. I'm
apologize
really
for that ahead of
sorry.
time if anyone else is interested, but just wanted to put that out there. Hmm.
Listen, it's a smart move, right? I
Dude, the
mean,
last
again,
thing I want is trying to
idiot,
help
idiot for
people
me. The
lower
fireman
cancer rates, and I
perfect
get
is
somebody
that,
burned
right?
up in a
So
building from wearing it in a wearing a flashover
yeah,
can. I'm like,
like what the
guys, it's not
what
meant
the
for this.
crap?
But yes, I know, I know.
I mean, that's why they make
You're
EMS
good,
gear
man.
blue. Well, that's a whole different story. Anywhere else from there. Listen, man, this was. This was a great
Oh yeah,
hour
yeah, let's
here,
do it.
and we got to do the size up 10 because I can't let you run without it.
I
So I
completely
want to
forgot
keep.
about it. So now
So
I'm
you thought you were getting away.
now
You
I'm
thought
double
like, oh, he's
surprised.
racking it up. He just did some compliments.
Mm,
Nice. Extra nervous. So it's time for the size up 10. Just 10 quick questions that never go quick. So here we go with Ryan from Carna Bunker Gear. Which one?
ooh,
This is like
I'm
I
gonna say
almost know this.
mountains.
Beach or mountains?
Even though I live in Florida, yeah, I'm not a huge beach guy. I don't like the
Oh,
sand, but
see, I would have been
mountains,
like,
yeah, they're beautiful, and I appreciate the scenery and the views. Hmm.
love it.
Yeah,
This is why we do the size up 10. You learn new things about your guests you wouldn't have thought. Number
depends who the
two,
company
night
is.
out or night
Yeah,
in?
I'd say probably I'll probably say a night in though, usually, just because going
Okay,
out
I'll go
costs a
with
lot of
that.
money, and I'm tired and I want to eat my own food. Mhm.
Nice. There's a new one.
Ooh,
Give me
you know what?
a
Just from us
movie
being
everybody
on
should
this
watch.
topic, obviously, of what we've discussed, Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo. That goes over the entire Teflon and DuPont 3M
Okay.
background story on Jesus. Oh yeah, Teflon. So that paints that whole picture, and the lawsuit and litigation that they've been going through for the past 20 years. That they'll probably wind up paying out more than the tobacco industry did. Mark Ruffalo. It's a good movie. Yeah. Hmm.
And it's Mark Ruffalo, so why not, right? I mean, excellent, excellent, excellent actor. All right, this could be the hardest one here. Cross country road trip.
Ooh,
Who is your
that
celebrity
is a hard one.
co-pilot, living or dead?
Hmm. I'm gonna go with you. Gotta have somebody that can talk to you a little bit, but not just gab at the mouth forever. Hmm. Ooh, and you know what? Kirsten can't look. I was gonna say you have to have a looker co-pilot too. We'll just,
You could say that. I mean, your choice,
yeah, yeah,
man. All
yeah.
your choice.
No,
It's
no, no
it's only
pressure.
going to
You
be
know what? I'm
listened
gonna
to
go
by
with Kid
thousands of
Rock just
people and
because
your girlfriend.
that's got to
So
be entertaining. He, I feel like, I feel like he's my
that would
spirit
be a
animal,
ride. I could
and I feel
almost
like I would
guarantee
get a
that
lot
would
out
be
of
a
that
ride.
conversation. There we go.
There you go. The first person to say Kid Rock in a
No,
movie.
absolutely not.
So,
That's such a waste of time. I
do you
do
make your
not
bed
like my
every day?
bed. I'm gonna go sleep in it 12 hours later. What am I making my bed for? I got more productive things to do.
Appreciate the honesty.
That's a good one. I like
How
books.
about a book everybody needs to read?
You know what? It's probably going to be pretty common, but I'm going to say Extreme Ownership with Jocko Willink. I did some stuff with them, basically
Sure.
playing laser tag. My buddy works for his company, so I was one of the guys helping out with the field training with companies that would come in and do leadership stuff. So that was really cool. Like, yeah, with Echelon Front. So I got to
Yep.
interact with them for a couple
Yep.
years
With
there,
Echelon Front.
and that book is just tremendous. And I think if you can take that and apply that those lessons, you can pretty much do whatever you want. That and how to win friends and influence people. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I figured
Nice. Two good ones. Both
they
have
are
been
that
said
good.
before, but they've been said because they're that good of a book. You know what I mean? And that's it. It's literally they're both right down here below where I'm recording from. And what I like about
Mm,
extreme ownership, and especially if you're going to start to do the acting officer job, is you can just pick it up, flip to any page, and you're going to get something that you can apply to your day as an acting officer or
yeah.
officer in the fire service or even running a business
I
like
agree.
that.
And then so many
That
times
you're
you
like,
read it
oh
and you're
man,
like, God, how am
how
I
did
so
I mess
dumb?
that
Like,
up?
this is such an obvious
You
thing.
know.
It was my fault.
And when you really think too, and this is why this never goes quick, but when you really think about when he's comparing it to where they were in Ramadi and
Yeah,
all those
huge
places,
situations.
like he was applying
Yeah,
these in like it doesn't get more
for
than that,
sure.
right? And I was not in the military, but like that was it. Like the guys that I work with that I know that were over there were like, oh no, they were there.
Yeah,
Like
all the pressure all the time.
that's not
So
like
if he
a
can do
made
it,
up
then we can do
story
it.
type thing. Yep, that's it, man. Right?
Ooh, gotta go
A couple more
highways. I'm an
questions here. Which one
efficiency
are you
guy.
taking, highways or back roads?
Hmm.
Get there first. Give me a bucket list
You know
place
what?
you
I was
want
gonna
to
say
visit.
probably, I guess Ireland. We went. I was gonna say Iceland, but we actually just did that in December. So Ireland, I want to go to for sure. I heard it's actually really cool. Oh, really? No,
I just
that's
did it.
awesome. That's funny.
I just
Yeah,
did
the
Iceland
the
in
lights were
November. We just
wild out
missed each
there.
other. Yeah. I we
Oh, you didn't get it? Sorry.
It's
I'll send you pictures. I'll send you pictures. Okay.
not so great. Not so great.
It never happened.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. It's a sour topic. We actually we were
No
in the Blue
way.
Lagoon
Yeah.
4
It
days
actually
before they
erupted
shut
while
it
we were
down.
out there. Yeah, we saw it was the sky was red at 2 in the
Oh
morning
yeah.
from our hotel room about 40 miles away there in Reykjavik.
Yep, it erupted
Yeah, for the
like 2 days after we
oh
left, but they
gosh,
shut
that's
down the
funny.
Blue Lagoon the day we flew out. They shut down the Blue Lagoon. So my youngest son was like, "Listen, if we gotta go, like we're all here together as a family in this beautiful
Yeah,
place,
yeah,
and it
right.
was lava that took us out. What more could you want?" He's 11, and I'm like, with my mud mask on my face, my
Yeah,
silica mask on my face, I'm like, "You're really smart, son.
that's true. That's
Wise behind
true.
your ears. If
Yeah,
we
they
gotta
were
go,
asking.
this
We
is
were
the
with a
place
big
to
group, and
do
they
it."
were asking me. They're like, "Well, what do we do?" I'm like, I mean, I'm a fireman, but I've never like fought a volcano before. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, don't breathe the toxic smoke that it's
Run,
exhaling.
run,
Mhm.
yeah, run far, far away. All right, two more
Ooh,
questions.
football.
Are you
Yeah,
watching
actually, I didn't play
football
football
or
in
football?
at all, except when I was little. I
Oh
wrestled
boy.
and did MMA and competed in powerlifting, but I went to Florida State, so I'm a huge Florida State football fan. And we're a little salty from last year's playoff demise, but yes,
No,
big
you
big
don't say.
football fan for college.
All right, last one. Give me
Ooh,
the best
I
advice
don't
you
even
could
know.
give
I'm
to
still
your
trying to figure
younger
that out
self.
now. Um, yeah,
That's an answer. If you want to go with it,
it's
that's 100%
it's
answer.
just
I'm still trying to figure it out now, right? Like,
have a direction and don't don't worry if you don't know what the direction is. Just make the first step forward. You might not know. Yeah,
yeah, because it's
yeah.
such a good one because you're so worried then you're afraid to take the step forward. And you're so
Hmm.
worried that if you don't take the second step, everything's going to go wrong.
Yeah,
But sometimes you may have to take a step to the right or a step
yeah.
to the
With this
left,
company, I mean, for
and that's
sure, it was
okay. But you just got to take
it's
that step,
felt like
right?
a million steps in such a condensed period of time, but it just took one step to send out of an old piece of gear to a lady in North Florida to take apart and start sewing and make a demo suit, and you know off to the races, one step at a time, man. That's all it is. Just with
You're off
anything.
to the races, literally. I love it, Ryan, man. Listen, man, I can't thank you enough for this time you spent with me today. I'm so happy we were able to do this, and I know I've learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners are
I hope
like,
so.
I'm gonna watch the cab of the turnout. I'm not gonna wear a
Mm,
long sleeve shirt because it's just too hot, but
I
and
hope
I'm not gonna
so.
not wear shorts,
I
but
hope so.
I'm
Thank you. Yeah,
definitely gonna
thank you for
watch
having
for
me
it
on,
side of
man.
the
I had a
night
great time.
as it might take
Awesome
away easy
conversation,
enough, man.
and yeah, we'll definitely do it again and figure out where we can go from here, man.
For sure. So thanks again to everybody for listening, all of our sponsors out there for the Size Up by National Fire Radio. This is Pip, and remember, what you do off the job matters.
National Fire Radio.